Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. It's been a while since I've made a little video. I've been playing other stuff. I'm looking forward to playing PoE tomorrow. Very happy about that. But I think we need to talk about the raid a little bit. It's been out a while. It's been out enough. We've had enough buffs. We're up to 15% now. I think we need to talk about the raid a little bit. And there is good and bad in here, right? There's good and bad. So, first and foremost, Vexy and the Gear Grinders. Honestly, very good, pretty good for a first boss. You have to do the mechanics. One thing I know is probably kind of funny in pugs, and even sometimes in our own guild, is people like to parse. People want to do damage, but getting in a motorcycle, you don't get the it isn't inducive to parsing. So, some people kind of just avoid the motorcycles. The way I've always done it is One Punch Panda. The way I've always done it is if I'm the second person to deposit an oil in a car, then I'll shoot the car. Right? That's how I've decided to mess with it at least. But for first boss, it's pretty good. You got some ads to cleave down. You got a burn phase. All good stuff, right? Nothing really wrong with it. Cauldron of Carnage. Once again, I think this is actually a pretty good second boss. The toy mechanic is the only hard part of the entire thing, outside of just dodging stuff, and the toy mechanic is something that can be done by anybody, by any pug group. It's not that big of a deal. It's very easy. No problem, right? Then you have a step up, and we're looking at Richard Reverberation. Rick Reverb. This guy's a little bit of a step up. He's not that big of a deal. Your main, you kill the ads or you die. So it's like, hey man, just kill the ads, right? So for people that like to parse, there's a lot of RNG involved and where the ads spawn and yada yada, but none of that shit really matters. I've honestly become less and less interested with looking at or caring about parses, especially depending on the boss, right? Some boss, if it's like pure single target, obviously, if it's pure single target, then like, hey, your parse, your performance really shows, and you can kind of work with that. But on bosses like Rick Reverb or Styx, where it's like, hey man, depending on spawns, depending on this, depending on that, do you get sorted? It's like, I don't. There's too many ads. Like even on Mugsy, like you can really cheese. Not like majorly cheese, but if you're someone that wants to even try rank 1 parsing, you have to do things that are wrong to get more overall damage by like primary targeting, damage amped ads, people only letting you hit the damage amped ad. Like there's all kinds of things you can do, and it's pretty cringe. So parsing is something that has become less and less I become less interested in over time. But Rick, I think, is fine. You know, it's very visible. You have the health bars here. You have the health bars over the mobs that you can see, hey, this needs to be drained. You kill the ads. You get 2 people get a circle. You clash the circle underneath you. It's very simple, right? No problems. Pretty chill. A bit of a step up, but not that big of a deal, right? Now we get to El Stixi Bunk Junker, and this is where I think it's more interesting to talk about the raid from this point forward, where the discussion regarding weak auras and add-ons and everything, I think, kind of comes to a head when you look at these next 2 bosses in Styx and Sprocketmonger. Because I don't necessarily think, well, hey, it's Boomy. I don't necessarily think that you should have to, like, have all these weak aura packages to do these bosses and do this and that and the other thing. Some of the nerfs to Styx have made it a little better, but the amount of atrocities I have seen in these pugs regarding Styx, you know, and if you don't have the right weak aura package, like let's say someone using Northern Sky or Echo or Liquid, and they're using 2 different ones, and then they tell them to go to the same quadrant, so then there's one quadrant that's open, that maybe there's a bomb there, nobody gets a scrapper, that's a guaranteed death on somebody, like, I don't know. Like, for a boss that's supposed to be your 2 box, your 4 of 8, its step up in difficulty, I think, is somewhat appropriate. But it's really the beginning of the, especially in pugs, which is, this content isn't made for pugs. Like in my guild, no problem. Pugs, problem. Where you really start to be like, okay, we need not only the weak auras, we need the same weak auras. We need to go here, we need to go there. We need to, someone has to go here, someone has to get this bomb, you can't hit these bombs. Like, after the nerfs, it's far more reasonable than what it was on release, especially for normal groups. It was almost, I would say, I think guilds should have been hard stuck on Sprocket instead of Sticks. But a lot of what the problem with Sticks is the spread nature of it. And I guess that goes into another topic of how kind of niche-y this raid has been. With like Spread Cleave, with like One Arm Bandit, with Rick Reverb, with kind of the disgusting strength of Monks on like Mugsy, to where you're building your strategy around teleporting out of these gales, and like this raid was very like niche, but like kind of weird. I don't really think the devs necessarily intended you to try and plan all of your players to like Void Elf or teleport out or whatever of these jails. I don't think they like considered that. They're like, hey, you just kill it and then do the mechanic. But the strats developed ended up being all of these different teleporty decisions, which ended up becoming the default strats because everyone just watches what Liquid and Echo do, and then they just copy that. They don't have their own like, hey, we're just going to kill these. Hey, we're going to do this. No, we're doing this because they did it, right? So that's kind of where Styx is, where it's like a step up, but the weak aura situation has kind of been very obvious in how it causes a significant amount of problems, and how players have honestly really relied on weak auras for quite some time. So Styx is okay, but I think it's not like bad. Like if you're like a decent player, it's fine, but Styx really kind of shows, or starts to show, the problem of weak auras, and then you get to Sprocket Monger. Oh, buddy boy. This might be the hardest boss in the entire instance. And I'm not even joking. I'm not joking that Sprocket Monger, for probably 95% of the player base, is the most difficult boss on Mythic than anyone has ever dealt with in quite some time. And that's because, simply, it is a weak aura boss with very little leniency. And one of the reasons why this boss's leniency is kind of non-existent is because of the flow of the fight. If the mines are blown up by a separate mechanic, fire lines, void lasers, drills, stuff like that, they do increased damage. In a sense, you can survive one, kinda, but basically for most people, it's gonna wipe your raid if you don't manually detonate these mines correctly. However, based on the movement and the flow of the fight, these mines have to be detonated in a certain order by certain people, which you can randomly either be able to or shouldn't be able to detonate these mines because of the mythic mechanic giving you the red or blue polarity. So it essentially turns this boss into a pure weak aura boss. And if you can follow a weak aura, it's not that bad. You just kind of follow the boss around. There's some funky tank positioning that you can do on this fight to make it easier, with how, for example, like the void lasers like to spread, and things like that. But this boss really exemplifies, like, everybody has to have the same weak aura pack. They all have to be working. They all have to be done correctly. And even if you have all of it, then you have to know exactly how the weak aura pack works, what you're looking for, where you need to go, what you need to explode, because you don't have a lot of time either. And that's the main point. That's the main part of the main difficulty, is if they change the timings of the fight to where, like, let's say they push back the void lasers a little bit, the fire beams a little bit, to where you had more time to pop these mines, maybe it would be something that was more reasonable to deal with without a weak aura pack. But going forward, and they want to getting rid of these really hard playable weak auras. This is a boss that I think is very influenced by the fact that they assume all players will have weak auras for this, especially this late. This is boss number 5 of 8, right? So the fact that they're expecting you to have weak auras, and they've built a boss seemingly what feels like around weak auras, by who needs to pop when they pop, because you can't just be like, U4 pops at 1, U4 pops at 2, U4 pops at 3, and you can't like, and we need 2 ranged on this set, so U2 range will pop this set because you have to go far. Like, you can't set up and plan and do that, because what if those 2 range have the same polarity? Then someone has to flex. What if you want to do all 4 healers on the first set, but then those healers, 3 of them get red, and 1 of them gets blue, and it pushes up a priority system, and it's like, most players aren't doing this. Most players aren't dealing with this. So the fact that you're going to have weak auras, essentially build the strategy for you, build your lists, build your priorities. This is a weak aura boss. And I think this is a boss they're probably trying to get away from designing, where I think the goal should be communication and planning should be your main deciding factor in how your success is determined on these bosses. Whereas this boss, I don't really know how well you're going to do this boss without weak auras. You know, it is... it's honestly kind of crazy to think about. Because this boss is just the weak aura boss. It's pretty crazy. And I'm honestly, this late into the tier for many, many guilds, I would argue Sprocket is the hardest boss in the entire raid this late into the raid, especially in farm. We've had more trouble on this boss than any other boss in the entire raid due to weak aura issues, due to this, due to that. Like, I thought the boss was kind of cool. Trying to keep 100% uptime with the movement, and the knockbacks, and the gates, like, trying to do all that stuff. I think the boss is cool, but, like, what a problem. What a problem in design, truly. And going forward, I really hope we don't deal with as many of these things. And I think that's one of the reasons why Blizzard's trying to deal with these weak auras and add-ons and stuff, which I understand, because the more power we have as players and the more tools we have to essentially play the game for us, the less they can design mechanics around, like, the less they can just design YOLO mechanics, right? You're not YOLO mechanicking this boss. But I guess that's probably enough on Sprocket. Going into One-Armed Bandit, this boss is honestly fine. After the nerfs, it does a lot more damage than I expected. The heal absorb is very strong. The amount of damage you're taking is very strong. But realistically, I think this boss was designed pretty well for the most part. Going back to the whole niches of the raid kind of thing. Af Warlock, Shadow Priest, kind of Boomy. Kind of. Boomy's not kind of on the same level there on this boss, because it's not just basically like full spread cleave. But really, though, I think that this boss is designed mostly well. I think the hard spread nature of it is kind of weird, but like, 1 spread cleave gimmick fight for a couple classes, sure. I mean, you can look at the Raced World first and go 4 Shadow Priest, 3 Windwalker monks. What the you know what I mean? But realistically, it's like, hey man, a little bit of spread cleave. I think designing fights where it's like, hey, look, the big execute fight, then these classes are like, yeah, they show their power. The spread cleave fights, the Shadow Priests and the Boomies and the Af Warlocks go, yeah, let me show you my spread cleave or my 2 target as Destro or Af or whatever, right? Like, I think having different types of fights is good. So even though, funnily enough, as a melee on this fight, you literally just, you follow the boss around, you hit the ads, the range to deal with essentially everything. All we do is pick up a coin and put it in. And the fact that you can set up which coin sets you want to put in allowed us to change our strat, because we're pushing earlier, because we have more gear. I think it is interesting. You can do things the way you want to. You can plan things out. I think One-Armed Bandit's actually a pretty well-designed boss altogether. You have to do certain, like, combinations, But even then, when you look at the combinations, the moment the ads spawn, big fire, big lightning, big coin, big bomb, like these big indicators over top of the mobs, you know instantly which mob you before going into a mechanic, you even if you didn't have a weak aura that said kill this on top of the mob, you could literally go into it and just say, hey, this next spin to win cast, we are killing fire and we're killing coin. So it spawns, you look for fire, you look for coin, you follow the boss to whichever one goes as melee, and then the ranged hit the other one, and you kill them, and you slot them, and you do it. It's you can YOLO, and you can talk about it, and you can plan around it, and I think this boss is something you can actually just pug. I think One Arm Bandit is more puggable than Styx and Sprocket, because of the weak aura-ish nature of them. But overall, I like him. And now you get into Muggsy. Muggsy, I think, is a very interesting fight. I thought, after testing it on the beta, like the PTR testing, everyone was like, holy fuck, we don't even want to test this boss. This is just a mess. This is stuff all over the place, but as strats were developed, things were done, lessons were learned. Muggsy's not a bad fight at all. I think it's pretty enjoyable. This is definitely a really nice arms fight. You can play Fury if you like, but Muggsy is for sure an arms boss, you know? But I think is actually a really fun, really cool boss. How you transition him back and forth across the room. You have the mechanics. The mines are kind of like, maybe they could get rid of a mine or two or something. I don't know. But the mines are kind of weird where if you don't have like immunities, they're pretty deadly and kind of dangerous. They're kind of odd, but other than like popping the mines, you need to soak them. Where the mines spawn is based on the group. You can set up your jail groups. You can set up the fire puddle, and then you set the fire. So you set the fire puddle up here. The jail's here. It looks like a dick and balls, and then you hide behind the jails for the frost spears, so you're not breaking the walls, so your friends can't hide. Like, I think the fight's actually pretty good. I have no problem with this fight. It was a menace when we tested it, but after strats were designed and things were made up, and we're like, do this, that, and the other thing, and obviously we're like copying Liquid or we're copying Echo. I think it was I like this fight. I think this is a good fight. A very difficult one, but I think this is a very, very good fight. I don't like, one of the meta bits of this fight was taking classes that could teleport out of the gales, so you didn't have to stay, like, for example, if you need a certain amount of people to soak a gale, but you only needed like 1 or 2 people to actually kill it based on the timing, you would put a class in each that would just teleport out, and they would teleport out. And that brought to the rise of like mag character needed to be Void Elf for that. Other characters you'd play, like Demon Hunters could leap out of it. Monks, which were already very, very strong at the start of the patch, could teleport out of it. Warlocks could teleport out. There's a lot of things that was very nichey and very weird about this fight. The execute phase wasn't even important enough for you to bring something like an arms warrior to actually kill it, which I thought was kind of weird, but I mean, if you need a single class to kill a boss, is it really good design, right? So even though the niche of my class is technically, like, while good, not really needed for the boss, I still think it's a very, very good boss. Gallywix ended up being very, very interesting. The fact that all of the mechanic... I have a couple weird feelings about it, but the fact that all of the mechanics of this boss were kind of hidden, you only really had stage 1 at the start. The fight itself wasn't, like, very, very difficult, which I didn't mind at all. People probably wanted it to be a little bit harder. Definitely some kind of secret phase would have been really cool, but for what it was, honestly, not that bad. A lot of people see Muggsy as the real final boss of the raid. Gallywix is not nearly as hard. But overall, I like Gallywix. I think there's... I mean, you could say there's a few too many ads for my liking, but, like, he's going to call in his goons. He's Gallywix, he's going to do that. So, like, it makes sense. But I like... One of the reasons why I like this fight compared to the other fights is this is also You don't need to weak aura this fight. You could do this fight natty, no problem. Hey guys, we're going to bait here. We're going to plan these people in these soaks where you are going to do the bombs and you're going to do this, you're going to do this. The mages are going to do their slow fall thing so they can get the bomb in the hole and get back. We're going to have a couple priests to grip people back so the tanks can go and then get gripped back on the platform after dropping the bomb. I thought that was kind of cool, having some kind of niche utility between like slow fall mechanics or grip, that kind of thing, since you're going to have a priest anyway. I thought that was honestly kind of cool. I had no problem with that. It was the mechanic's probably more annoying, especially for people who might not have a way better spread of classes. I mean, we like triple mage, Gallywix, a lot of other guilds, if they had it, were running 3-4 mages if they could, because of how tanky they were and how they could essentially do the mechanic themselves, which is just, what if you have a tool to do the job, why not use the easiest tool that you have, right? But overall, I really like this fight. I like the raid tier in general. The thematics of it, the tier sets were cool. They were fun. One thing I don't like is I feel like the actual casino part of the Galagio, like, you fought One-Armed Bandit, but, like, bro, the fact that we didn't have, like, I just wanted a roulette wheel boss, man. Imagine if Gallywix's final phase, even if it, like, imagine if for Gallywix, you had to jump down into the hole in the middle, and once you, on the last phase, after filling up the rest of the platform with lightning, so you do that, and you jump down there, and it brings up a floor so you don't die, and you go into a new room where you're finishing off Gallywix, and it would be like a big roulette table, you know? I think that, honestly, I really kind of wish for a casino-themed boss, like we really had a roulette wheel, and Gallywix's big, stupid floating head in the middle of it would have made perfect sense. And I'm assuming the devs probably also wanted something like that, but they just didn't have time for it, is what I had to guess. But I really, or they just couldn't think of like really good mechanics that would be fun for some kind of like roulette wheel, like everyone has to be in red, or maybe does a cast like all bets on black, to where if you're in a black square, you get blown up or need to be there or something. I don't know. It could be fun. The board could spin and all that crazy stuff. I think they could have done some interesting stuff with it, and I do feel that casino part of the Galagio itself is kind of a missed opportunity. There's also no like potentially like putt mini golf kind of boss for fun in one of the early stages inside the the golf area here. Because this area was basically wasted, because like you have Cauldron of Carnage, Rick Reverb, Sprocket down here, and then this entire dumpster area was Styx. I thought having a little golf thing would be fun, but, you know, it's whatever. You can't get everything in there. The Galagio, I wish, was cooler. I wish you actually did more, like, One-Armed Bandit was the most casino-themed of all of them. I do wish, like I said, I wish there was a roulette boss, but you can't always get what you want. But otherwise, you know, outside of the weak aura issues of the mid-raid, like these two bosses, I thought it was pretty good. I didn't really have any issues with it. I thought the strats that were designed for it were fun. We even changed strats now that we have more gear for a couple of the bosses based on their percent-based phasing, which I think is cool. But overall, really enjoyable raid. I just really hope going forward that these weak aura, like, it's not as much Styx. Like, if people are paying attention, Styx isn't that bad. But Sprocket is basically a weak aura boss, and nobody likes a weak aura boss. And I really think that it's like, yep, it is. And I really hope that they, with their push towards reducing the power of weak auras and add-ons, will appropriately design bosses after taking that power away from us to have more just like YOLO or just play the game kind of bosses instead of stuff like Sprocket. I think Sprocket is probably the least fun boss in the whole raid and is a true example of the problems of weak aura design. But otherwise, I could yap around and around in circles, but that's it for me. I'm going to be playing some PoE. I've also recently mentioned this as well, but I have I found a physical comp group to play with, and I've been having a lot of fun with them. There's Miss Marvel. These guys I haven't met before. They're all Karma. I think his Discord name's like Summit and Tony. They're all like super chill, super nice people, and I've had a lot of fun playing with them. And I finally get to play my class as in a Mythic Plus comp. So I've actually been having a ton of fun playing with them. We've been doing fairly well, almost to Resil 18s on this guy, just with playing with them for a couple days. And I've just been playing a lot of Mythic Plus with them. You've probably seen me stream it. Really enjoyable. Shout out to them. I've been having a ton of fun with that. And otherwise, I will see you when I see you. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.